Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the WdY&x podcast. And our topic for today is health and hyper productivity with special guest Stephen Puri. Today, you'll learn how to achieve good health and hyper productivity. Welcome, Stephen.
Well, thank you for having me. For those listening, I hope this is a very fun episode, but it has some very helpful prescriptive things. So whether you're listening in the car, watching on your phone, we're going to share a bunch of thoughts around how to get that great thing that's inside you out.
So, we're going to get that great thing inside you out. First, let's kick it off with an introduction from you.
Okay, so here are some things that you may find interesting about me. Who is this guy talking to me, right? So I have been a senior executive at a couple motion picture studios, which is very interesting because, as we'll discuss, in motion pictures for 100 years, we've had all sorts of remote work, hybrid work, in-person work, and there are some established techniques to do great work. I've also raised $21 million of venture and run 3 tech companies with 1 exit and 2 failures. And that's taught me a lot about remote and hybrid work. So what Will and I were talking about is some of the lessons that have come from that might be helpful for you or instructive for you, whether you contribute to a team or whether you lead a team.
Wow, really excited. Looking forward to it. Let's start the first question. You work in the intersection of tech, entertainment, and innovation. How has your personal approach to health evolved to support sustaining high performance in this demanding environment?
Okay, so everything that I'm going to say is founded in this belief, which is I believe that we do have something great within us. And the question of this lifetime is, are we going to get it out? And there are very strong forces in this world to not get it out. There are a number of apps, we don't have to name them all, that encourage you to scroll so they can sell your life to advertisers and they keep the money, right? So it is very hard now to overcome beautifully designed distractions and actually do the things that move your life forward, your family's life forward, your team's life forward, that could change the trajectory of your company. So one of the things that I've noticed is that if you're a leader, there are some techniques you can use, some conditions precedent you can set to encourage the people on your team to be able to do those great things. And we'll talk about those. And if you are an individual contributor, suppose you are the designer, you are the engineer, you are the developer, you are the writer, you are the blogger, here are things that you can create in your own environment, whether you work from home or you work in an office, that give you a better chance of doing that great thing. So that's a lot of the fun I hope we get into today, Will.
So I guess I want to do a follow-up on what you just talked about. So let's start with, how do we get people to get that great thing out of them? Are there like tips, frameworks, process?
Yes. Okay. So there is a lot of research and a lot of writing around this concept of there's deep work, as Cal Newport, loves to call it, and there's shallow work, right? And many of the productivity minds have written about this in their own terms, but it comes down to these ideas of there's like a shallow set of things that you may do. It could be returning emails in your inbox, filing your TPS reports, things that need to get done, but they're not deeply meaningful. And then there are the things that you do that when you talk about them with your team, your entire team sits back in their chair and says, wow, like that changes where we're going as a company, right? Hopefully we make time for the latter. Now, here's what here's a concept I'd like to put out with everyone, which is the concept of flow states. Some of you are nodding your head. Some are like, yes, we know flow states. Maybe not everybody. So I'm going to take a second to define that, which is this was named by a Hungarian-American psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote the seminal book called Flow. And his thesis was there are high performers who get into these concentrated states to do their great things. And he said it's across disciplines. It's very common between athletes describing how they do this, scientists, inventors, artists. But these people whose names we know, they have the ability to get into this state. And he said, I want to figure out what is this state? How do they do it? And after his research, he said, I want to call this flow. It is something where it is true that you are contributing great thought and energy into the thing you want to do. But at a certain point, it's almost like you're on a river that carries you forward. And he said, that's the metaphor I think is important here. I'm going to call this state a flow state. So you may have experienced this. You may have done this already in your life, maybe not called it that. A lot of people call it different things. For example, there's a famous Michael Jordan, the basketball player. He had a quote about being in the zone. That's what he called it, where he's like, it's me and the ball. And what he meant by that is at a certain point, I don't even see the defenders, see the scoreboard or the stands. When I'm in the zone, it's me and the ball. And as we know, he's debatably the greatest basketball player of his
Absolutely.
generation or all time, right?
Absolutely.
But there's also like with Picasso, there's a quote that I always mangle a little bit where he says, "Hey, I stayed up all night. I kind of lost track of time. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't eat or drink water, but look what I created." Right. And he was caught in that energy of creation. And this is true. You can find hundreds of examples of this among the great minds that have created the products and the art and the things that we quote. So this is not inaccessible. This is not some strange thing that no one but Prometheus can go and steal it down and bring it to, to the common people. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi said, you know what? These people seem to access it in very similar ways. It is about blocking a certain kind of distraction. It is that there are certain kinds of tasks where you can get into flow. For example, he said, you have to believe the task is meaningful.
Mm.
He said, if you think you're doing something mean, I am just shuffling papers on my desk, you're not going to get into that flow state, right? He said it has to be something where you have skills that apply. So it's not Michael Jordan trying to paint, nor is it Picasso trying to play basketball, right? That's just frustration. It has to be something where your skills apply, and it has to be something where your skills are challenged. So it's not Michael Jordan playing with, eighth graders, or Picasso painting blind with his feet or something, you know what I mean? It is challenging to you. And he and others have written about how sometimes music helps. There's certain kinds of music that help you get into that state where the world falls away. And I'll give you a very personal example. The first time I experienced this, I didn't know the name flow state, but I was in Austin, which is where I live, and I had to go to SF to meet my team. And I had on the flight some designs that I needed to do for a feature I wanted us to build. And I remember the plane took off and the plane landed. And I was like, there's been some horrible emergency. The engine fell off. Like we landed in Dallas. Like we were in the air like 15 minutes. And I looked down and 2 hours and 40 minutes had gone by. I had no conception of that. I don't know if the drink cart came by. I don't know if the signs had gone on. I didn't know anything, but my designs were done. And I'd just gone into a flow state without knowing what that was. And so as we talk about this, Will, like how do you create flow and the opportunities to get into flow? There is something you can do as a contributor, or if you're a leader and you want to make this more available to your team, which is flow generally requires an hour or two minimum to really accomplish something. You can't do it in 10-minute in between Zoom moments. So if you are a leader and you book the schedule of your direct reports so that every hour there's a new Zoom to go to, no one's going to do anything that meaningful, right? And I'll give you an example. My company, as well as some other companies that we work with, we've taken to blocking 2 hours in the morning and just saying, you know what, this is sacred time, and this is the time when we expect you to think, and something may come of it. Some days, nothing will come of it. Some days you'll just say, I worked on this problem. I know these designs are not perfect, or this idea is not perfect, and get there. And other days you'll have something where in the staff meeting, people will say, we should all do what Will just said. And that's a healthy technique because it's in those moments of deep work that you can achieve a flow state. And there's research, and Nir Eyal has written a bunch about this, which is if you get interrupted in a flow state, it can take 15 to 25 minutes to get back in. So you have to be very conscious of like, are you going into Slack every 20 minutes just to say, oh, hey, Steven, yeah, here's that report you wanted, here's that thing. You're going to lose it. So this, I hope, Will, this is helpful for you and your audience, is to say, there is this concept of flow states. There is a lot of writing and smart people have written about it. And it helps you do those things that actually move life forward as opposed to just, hey, I mailed the bills.
What I learned from you that's really important is the intentionality part of it.
True. You and I have talked about that.
Intentionally carving out time, giving it appropriate time, and also modeling the way as a leader. Because if you say the first 2 hours of the day is the most important period that you should practice flow state, you're actually leading by example. You're telling people to do it and you're giving them the time. Of course, there are instances you probably have to interrupt, but most of the time you probably don't. And that practice leads to other people listening to you because you're doing it and you're leading by example.
Will, I would love to pick up on that because, as you know, a lot of these principles I baked into the company that I built, which is a flow state app. And I'll tell you, one of the things we found was that Slack, which can be super fun and there are emojis and you can post things and it's a great engagement tool about seeing your team, but it was keeping all of us out of flow because we'd start thinking about something and invariably there would be, John asked Will for the thing, and then Will's like, actually, Steven has that. Yeah, ask Steven for it, and then we're all in Slack, right? So what we built was this, and it's something that you don't even need to use our tool if you just want to be sensitive to this, is what we did with the Suka company, my tool, is that when you hit play to start a session, it gives you beautiful music, it blocks your distractions, all that. You can also hook it up to your Slack so that anyone who tries to Slack you sees a little
Do not
pop up that
disturb.
says, exactly, it says, Will's in a focus session right now. And that does two things. It makes that person think, do I really need to bug him right at this moment? You know? And it also lets them know if they do send you a message, say, hey, Will, I know you're in a focus session, but I do need this. They know they're not going to get an immediate response. So the pressure is off you to say, oh, I need to show that I'm here working, because you know that they see that and they go, oh, that's right. This is 9 to 11 a.m. I'm leaving this for Will. He's not going to see it until later. And the pressure's off you so you can stay in what you're doing. So that sort of sense of how do we, as a team, all respect this deep state? That's really powerful. And you're right, you do it together. You could do it in many different ways.
And the other thing I pick up on you, and you said you press play.
Yeah.
Are there any specific music that, based on your experience, that you think activate the initiation of the flow state, right? Because I'm just wondering, like, I could sit here, like, and I agree with you. There are days on weekends where I decide to study something, and I would start at 10 o'clock at night, and before you know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still
Mhm.
sitting here, and my wife's like, "Are you going to bed?" Right? And I was like, "Yeah," but I didn't realize 1 o'clock. It was like 3 hours went by. But like for our audience, if they have not, I'm sure, I hope they achieve some flow state in their life. But if they're struggling because of all
Mhm.
the distraction, they're hitting us left and right. Is there a music that they could use
Yes.
to achieve like a state?
Will, this is something where there are the middle of the road works for almost everyone, and there are those outliers. So you and I
Mm.
probably both have the friends that they do their best work when they're listening to 90s gangster rap or those
Ah,
heavy metal stuff. Right. So there are outliers, but I'm going to tell you, for most people, what they've found is 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures of
90,
ambient,
okay.
yeah, ambient non-vocal music
Mm.
seems to help most people over 15 minutes to half an hour fall into that state where the world falls away. They're in the zone, they're in their flow state, right? So we, as you know, I've came from film and have a bunch of friends who are film composers who have time on their hands. I asked them to write about 1,000 hours of original music that's all in this sort of genre. And one of the things I thought was very interesting is, as you know, thousands of people have come to use this, is a number of people said, oh, this is beautiful, thank you so much, but I actually love listening to the sound of birds or the sound of water or the sound of rain or something like that. So we launched a whole set of playlists that are not musical, but that help some
Nature,
people. Exactly,
like
nature.
nature based.
A friend was in Kathmandu and had his recording equipment, and it rained, and he recorded 2 hours of rain in the Himalayas. So we just,
That's probably an awesome thing to
it's
hear.
so cool. We call it Himalayan Dream Rain. You can listen
Yeah.
to that for 2 hours. Some people said they really loved being in coffee shops, but maybe they have children now. They can't go to a coffee shop to write. So we found a recording of a couple of hours in a coffee shop in Vienna, Austria. And if you want, you can hear the espresso machines going in the background and clanking of dishes. It may not work for everyone. For the people who enjoy that, they're mentally trained to go in the coffee shop is where I write my great blog posts or my great code or whatever it is. It allows you to do that. So there's more than just music. It's almost like an entire oral, oral
Mm.
environment. And you might find the things work best for you. The same way you touched upon, you talked about early in the morning and late at night. You've already brought both of
Yes,
those
yes.
concepts up. What you're talking about is chronotype. And
Chronotype. I didn't even know.
as this is the thing, there's again a lot of research in this, and this is very personal. This is, as you become a great leader, you recognize, hey, Will's a morning person for coding, but Steven's a great person to write blogs late at night, right? So
Yeah.
the chronotype is what day part is best for you to do certain kinds of work. And it is true, like in SF, you and I both have adventures in tech. So in SF, there are a lot of developers, a lot of engineers who are like late night, I do my best coding in the middle with the headphones on until
Yeah.
4 a.m. sort of thing, right? And you have other people who, first thing in the morning, they're very fresh. I'll tell you a film anecdote. Ron Bass, who's a great screenwriter, he was an attorney turned screenwriter. He realized how he worked, and he said to his family, I'm not going to talk to you in the morning. There's no, hey, what cereal do you want? I'm going to make you some pancakes for breakfast. Did you do your homework? He said, I can't talk to you until 9 a.m. because if I talk to you, if you talk to me, I can't hear my characters' voices in my head, and I can't write dialogue. It's my window to say, I'm going to write great dialogue. Now,
Mm.
this is the man who has written scripts that have gotten Tom Cruise, Julia Roberts, Dustin Hoffman, amazing
Yeah.
actors to read his characters and say, I want to play that character. I want to say those words. And that was something he developed as he transitioned from being an attorney to being a writer. He said, I realize these 3-4 hours in the morning are sacred for dialogue. And his family understood. And he's a very, well-respected screenwriter, so I'm sure his family's proud.
Thank you for explaining flow state, how to achieve flow state. One of the challenges we have in our life is with so much distraction bombarding us left and right. What daily habit or ritual do you believe is essential or maybe non-negotiable, right? For maintaining both physical vitality and mental clarity, because you need mental clarity to achieve flow state.
This is very true. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of our chat today, and you and I have talked about this when we've spoken before, the way the economics work of social media is there is so much money that they can pay the highest paychecks to behavioral psychologists, to user experience designers, to engineers, and they make beautiful products. Let us not kid ourselves. These products that steal our life, they are the product of some of the smartest people in their disciplines. So if you want to retain mental clarity, and you love this, it begins with intention. You have to say, I recognize how great the pull is from these beautiful apps. But I also recognize that if I go spend half an hour in there, or an hour, or 2 hours, I'm giving away my life. I'm just giving it to someone else, and I receive nothing in return. A dancing monkey video,
A temporary dopamine.
temporary dopamine. And actually, Huberman had a great episode on this where he talked about, for the first time in history, you have now zero effort dopamine. You can sit on your butt on the sofa and just get dopamine hits without having to do anything, right? How
Which is
hard
bad.
is how hard is that to overcome, right? So
Yeah.
to answer your question, when you think about mental clarity and physical clarity, I'm a big fan. As you know, I met my wife in yoga. I have a daily yoga practice, huge part of my life, right? So I'm a big fan of maintaining a sane amount of exercise in your life, not going crazy, but your body needs to move, your blood needs to flow,
Yeah.
you need to, be active in a certain way. Do something that requires you to shower, right?
Yeah.
Be
Yep.
that active,
I
right?
believe in that too.
I know. So there is that. And that supports a healthy mind. Like my father, who's 87 now, since he was 8, every single day he stands on his head. It's part of his practice, his yoga practice, right?
Wow.
Every single day. And that for him rejuvenates his mind. There's something about the blood flowing the other way, whatever it is,
Yeah.
where he's super sharp guy, 74 patents to his name at IBM, like smart guy. And hopefully the result of having a sound body is that you can then focus on mental clarity. Now, let me go back to some tools you can use, because the same way people build tools to steal your life, people like myself and other smart people are building tools to say, hey, you're ready to do something with your life. Let's do something, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the things we built was we said, hey, we know the apps that steal your attention. They steal mine. Like I'm victim to them too, right? So in Suko, when you are in a session and you hit play and the music's playing and your little coach is there helping you, you can get notifications when you open up one of the distracting apps, and you get to just choose which ones they are. Like if you can say, here's my list. I want to stay out of Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever the things are. Some people, they scroll by looking at news sites. Like that's their procrastination. Like I'll go look at CNN, I'll go look at Fox, whatever, right? So you can get a notification every time you open one of them up. Suka, your smart assistant will say, hey, Will, do you really need
Hello.
to? Yeah,
Hello.
exactly. Your assistant's like, hey, Will, do you really need to be on CNN right now? Is that helping you write your blog post? And that little nudge, that tiny nudge helps you to choose, who do I want to be? Am I the person who's doing something great with my life? Or am I the person who's giving my life to Mark Zuckerberg, giving my life to, one of these other, founders to sell? And the same thing with your phone. This is an incredible distracting device, beautifully made, all sorts of
Yeah.
notifications. And we made a simple thing where when you start your session, you can, with your camera, shoot a QR code, put your phone down. If you pick it up, your smart assistant knows and says, Will, do you really need to be on your phone? And it's helped me a ton. It's the stupid, simplest thing you'd ever think of. There are other fantastic apps that do this. But again, find the tools. If you know what's distracting you, oh man, I pick up my phone when I procrastinate, then find the tools that help you with your phone. And sometimes you just need a nudge. You just need someone to say, do you really want to do that?
It's really interesting, right? There's this product that steals your attention.
Mm-hmm.
They create all this addictive content that you seek,
Yeah.
and they give you more. And now you counter with a tool that sort of pull you away from it. That's impressive. That's impressive.
We hope. We hope. I'll tell you this. You know the old phrase about necessity is the mother of invention, right? I will tell you, for me, in creating this, pain was the mother of invention,
Hmm.
because I realized there was something I was doing, and maybe you relate to this. Well, I mean, you're probably more evolved in this way than
I
most
don't
people,
know. I
but
don't know about that.
right. But I would do this thing where I would say, tomorrow morning, I'm going to start at 9 a.m. I'm going to work on my whatever it's right. And I had this cold start problem, I call it, where I would find myself at 9:15 still kind of returning some emails and scrolling through my inbox or checking the news, and 9:30 rolls around, I'm starting to get actually to work. And I realized that that was how the dominoes started falling during the day, where at the end of the day, I would be frustrated. I'd be like, oh man, I didn't finish. Well, I'll get up early tomorrow. I'll try and finish what I didn't finish today before I start tomorrow's work. And the dominoes
Snowball.
just go exactly
Snowball.
snowball through
Yeah.
the week, right? Because you're just lying to yourself. And I was like, I'm so frustrated about this. I want to do that thing, the 6 whys, right? Why do I not start at 9 a.m.? Okay, well, because I'm procrastinating. Well, why am I procrastinating? And I realized it's because I feel overwhelmed. I would sit down and I'd feel overwhelmed. I was like, well, why do I feel overwhelmed? And it came down to one of two things. I either looked at my task list and I said, there's 17 things. I'm never going to get them all done before my 11 a.m. Zoom with Will. And it's almost pointless to start because I can't do all this. And it's this paralysis from having too many things.
Yes.
Or there would be one thing on there, they'll be so big. It's like, I have to write my book. I'm not going to write my book this morning. And that size of that thing would also paralyze me. So what we did in my case is your smart assistant at the beginning of the day just says, hey, Will, what are the 3 things that are important you get done today? I think it's from your list. I think it's these 3, but you can change it if you want. And then as soon as you hit play, the music starts, it hides the other 14.
Mm.
So you can only see those 3 things. And there's no more paralysis of, oh, I'm too many things. Can I tell you, since we launched that, our members have a 77% better chance of finishing all 3 than when they could see all 17. They would only finish 2.
Wow.
And it's the
Have
same
you
tasks, same
have you
amount of time.
created a video related to that one to capture that analysis? I
You,
think that's
you know,
powerful.
that's good. I should do
That's
that. I've not
powerful.
done that because we're
That's
still learning and
powerful.
growing and talking to our members. So that sort of thing of knowing yourself, going, okay, why am I doing this? If anyone else listening has that procrastination getting going in the morning, ask yourself why, and then ask yourself why, and ask yourself why until you get down to it's because of this and solve that thing.
So let me follow up with the next question. I think I did this in my career many times. Right? You trade something to get something, right?
Yep.
And there's only a few things you could trade. And I remember earlier in my career, and even the last few years of my career in tech, I sacrificed sleep to get something done. In a
Sure.
way, I also sacrificed nutrition, right, to get
Yeah.
this done. Like, and
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. I paid the price, and I'm working on it for the past 3 years. But what does role of sleep and nutrition play into actually being able to accomplish hyper productivity?
Yes. Embedded in your question is the answer because you know the answer already, but I will say it out loud. I'll
You're
say it
the
out loud for
expert,
you.
so I'm asking the question.
Yeah. On sleep, I'm not the expert, but I've read a lot of the
Yeah.
same studies that you have. And it is true. There is a refreshing period as you sleep, as you actually get through real cycles of sleep, not just shallow sleep, that changes the clarity you have the next day. And it is also true that having a knowledge of your own like circadian rhythm really helps because if you wake up like in the middle of a cycle, you can actually be foggier than if you had slept less. So
That's
if
actually a very good point because I watched a video many months ago that
yeah,
talks about that if like you said, if you woke up in the middle of a cycle, you might as well just go back in and complete
yes.
the cycle.
And commonly those cycles are about 90 minutes. And if you have an Oura ring or you have any one of the wearables, right? They often track that for you to see like, okay, let me see when you're in REM, when you're in, and they can sense, okay, so here's the cycle you're on. So for example, suppose during the week, like for example, I get up at 5 a.m., right? I make a really strong effort to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. So my body is set to that's when I'm
Including
not.
weekend?
Well, here's the thing is on the weekends, there's always that appeal of like, oh, it's Saturday, I can sleep in, and
Yeah.
Laura's here. We're having a son this year, right? Which is going to change everything, right? So, but there is that appeal of like, oh, it's Saturday, let's sleep in until 8 or whatever, sometime. And I do notice that when I do 5 a.m. during the week, at 5 a.m., usually my brain is ready to go. It knows 4:58, my brain's going, Steven's going to be up in a minute and get going, right? But on the weekend, it's a roll of the dice because I'm not waking up at 5. So sometimes I wake up maybe in that right zone of the end
Yeah.
of the cycle. And other times I wake up and I'd look at Laura and I'm like, wow, I could keep sleeping. Like I know it's like 9:12, but I could probably sleep until 10 or something. Right. And it's very interesting in that regard. But again, we don't have to optimize every weekend day to be perfect, right? But we are trying to hack ourselves to be happy.
Well, I think the key there, as you mentioned, is happy.
Yeah. And
We
that's
talk
how I
about
named my company.
we talk about leaders playing an important roles in building cultures, right? In
Yes.
your opinion, how does leader build a culture that focuses on health and well-being?
Well, I think as a real leader, there are really two things that you can do, right? And I'm putting aside hiring because of course you have to hire and do things like
Yeah.
that. But there are really two high level things you do. One is you set an agenda or a vision, right? We're doing this to cure cancer, to change the state of this thing in the world, right? So you're saying this is what we do. We should attract people who believe this is important and they want to put
Okay.
their lives towards doing that, right? And the second thing you do is you set a style. You set a way, a tone of how we deal with each other internally, how we deal with competitors, how we deal with partners. And you see the whole spectrum, from like Travis at Uber, he would go and hire Lyft drivers. And then as he's in the Lyft, he would try and talk the Lyft driver into working for Uber, like you have the whole spectrum of how do we treat each other? How do we act?
Mhm.
Right. And that ripples down into very, very fundamental decisions. So if we decide this is a culture of respect, if we decide this is a culture where we win on the value of our product as opposed to
Mm.
the tactics that we take to undermine the competition, right?
Yep.
That's not just how you address the competition. That's how you address each other internally. If you build that culture, that is how you end up attracting leaders who say, I really want to get to know Will. And if Will functions best 2 days at home during the week and 3 days here, and on those 2 days at home, he does the kind of work that's the deep work that moves forward. When the 3 days here, he's meeting with everyone, we're going over designs and collaborating, right? That comes from the top, where that leader feels like, oh, I can do this in this organization. I don't have to say, Will, you have to be here 40 hours a week, 5 days a week, clock in, badge in, like what Tesla's doing in some of these companies. I fundamentally don't trust you. If you don't badge in, I don't
Yeah.
think you're working, right? But that comes from the top.
As I read between the line, I think one of the things, the word that jumps out is empathy, right?
Yeah, that's a
Empathy
good
and
word.
understanding of your people, and I love that because you can't build a culture with just saying few things and doing something else, right?
Yes.
And I love the fact that you talk about building that culture and practicing it, and also understanding people. Amazing. Today we talk about productivity and
Hmm?
well-being. We talk about flow state. We talk about building culture that promote people to be hyper productive. If there are three takeaway from today's episode, what would those be?
Okay. So let's say one of them is one of your favorite words, which is intention, which you talk about a lot in your episodes, but I'll say how it applies here. Why I'm your guest today and what I have to talk about is when you set the intention of, I want to reclaim my life, I want to live each day with intention. If I could finish my work at 3 p.m. and have time to play with my kids and to have done great work, that is my intention more than, well, I'm going to work this until 6 p.m. like I'm supposed to. And who cares? The work is good. And by the way, I will miss my children because, they're doing their homework and going to bed, right? So if you set that intention, everything in this episode opens up to you. If you cannot set that intention, don't even listen to this episode because nothing else will help you. So I say that's number one. I say number two is know thine self, right?
Know thyself, yeah.
As you start to understand, hey, you know what? I'm Ron Bass. Before 9 a.m., I can write the dialogue that gets Julia Roberts and Tom Cruise to be in my movie. You then share that. You share it with your family. You go, you know what? Listen, for me to make the, $2 million a script that I make so we have the life we have, I need you to understand this is weird. Everyone else's daddy plays with them at breakfast. Give me that time. I can't talk to you before 9 a.m., but I'm going to do the things that allow us to have the life we want to have, right? That applies throughout, these things. Like I just said, like if you're a leader, if you're aware how you lead, if your will and you say, hey, I really function best 2 days at home during the week and I'll bring back the ideas that change our company, you have to know that. You have to know if, oh, I code best at night. I write blog posts best in the morning, whatever that thing is. Know what time you're best to wake up. So if the first one is intention, second one is know thyself, and say the third one is, and you said this before I did, which is empathy. We are connected, all of
Yes.
us humans are like cells that are connected in this organism. And the more we relate to each other in a healthy way, the more we're inspired to do something great. If I think that, suppose I'm a blogger, which I'm not, I'm not a wordsmith, but suppose we're a blogger, my connection to other people, my empathy for them might inspire me to say, I'm going to actually work the extra hour on this post because I think it might help people move forward in their lives. Like maybe I'm writing a post about high school graduates and what they should look for, in their university careers. Maybe I'm writing a post for people graduating or retiring and how to have that transition into a new meaning of life. If I actually feel deep empathy for that, I might spend that extra hour to go, let me take this from good to great. And as we started this episode, if you have something great inside you and you can get it out, pretty amazing way to use this lifetime.
Wow, amazing. Impressive. I totally enjoy our conversation,
Yeah,
but I
me
want to
too.
give you time to tell my audience how to engage you, reach out to
Yeah,
you,
sure.
the best way to connect with you.
Yeah. So if I have referenced anyone, because we covered a lot of ground, Will, anyone listening who has a question, who's Cal Newport? What's that blog post by Near? Who's Huberman? Or, whatever. My email address is public. You are welcome to put it in the show notes. It is Stephen at thesukha, TheSukha.co. That is my email. You're welcome to drop me an email and say, hey, man, what's that Cal Newport's post? I will not write you back 19 paragraphs, the history of my life and what I think about the world. I don't have time to do that. You don't want to read it. But I will write back to you, say, oh, here's a link to that book, Flow. And you may really learn something from this. I get back to all my emails in 24 hours if I'm not sick or traveling. So I make that offer to you. And anyone who wants to try the thing that we built about flow states, it's at thesukha.co, TheSukha.co. It's free for 7 days, no credit card. It may help some people. And if it doesn't, try some of the other apps out there. There's some really great apps by some really smart people.
Well, Stephen, thank you for your time. I really appreciate having a great conversation with you. Thank you for being a guest on my podcast, and have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having me.